But in our first hour, are we addicted to war? Is there no hope for peace? What's the nature of what's really going on? And where do we go with this? Michael Scheuer is with us. He's the 20-year-plus CIA veteran, served as chief of the Bin Laden Unit, a.k.a. Alex Station, the Osama Bin Laden Tracking Unit out of the Counterterrorism Center. Resigned from the CIA in 2004. He's currently an adjunct professor of security studies at Georgetown University and a senior fellow at the Jamestown Foundation, writing regularly for their publication Global Terrorism Analysis. He's also the author of several books, including Imperial Hubris, Why the West is Losing the War on Terrorism, and Marching Toward Hell, America and Islam After Iraq. Michael Scheuer, welcome back to our show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you back with us. You recently said on a couple of different programs that you felt that Barack Obama did not care about protecting the American people. Can you tell me what you meant by that?
No, what I said was that I didn't think any of the last four presidents really cared about protecting America. And that's certainly something, an interesting claim. And the only way I can back it up is kind of looking at what's not been done in the last 25 years to protect Americans. Our borders are open. We have not finished securing the Soviet nuclear arsenal. Our debt is held by our enemies in Saudi Arabia and in China. And the list goes on and on and on.
But the context, I think, of this original frame was with regard to Al-Qaeda and, who has killed in the United States and arguably even around the world, if you want to include all of our combat casualties, fewer Americans than the tobacco industry kills in a day in the United States. By protect Americans, perhaps are we being a little hysterical here, Michael Scheuer?
I don't think so. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect the government at some point to fulfill the very definition of sovereignty, for example, which is closing borders and maintaining an orderly system of immigration. I don't think that's too much to ask. We did just fine for a couple of hundred years without an open border, simply by saying that if you weren't a citizen, you couldn't work. We up until Reagan's amnesty in '86, we had about 1 million people a year who came north and before the picking season, and about 1 million people a year who went south afterwards. Absolutely.
And so it wasn't an issue of having open borders or closed borders. It was an issue of having people, employers, who were willing to hire people illegally as opposed to not. I mean, it used to be that the unions were strong enough that they prevented or they outed employers who hired illegal aliens. That's not the case any longer.
No, sir, that's not. And there's all kinds of ways to address this problem, whether it's the manner you just mentioned or whether it is actually controlling the borders and letting in the people you want and keeping out the people that you don't.
But the fact of the matter is that assuming that the official story is correct for the moment, that the hijackers who came into the United States on 9/11 came in on visas. That no amount of borders and fences. I mean, we could wrap ourselves around like East Germany did during the Cold War, and they still would have gotten in.
Well, then,
for that matter, I got into East Germany during the Cold War, and had I been, intent on destroying that country, I presumably could have done it.
Well, I think that is a train of thought that takes you to looking at the best-case scenario, in the sense that we have spent tens and tens of billions of dollars on electronics at border crossing points, assuming that, first of all, no one in the enemy's camp reads the newspapers and knows we've done that, and second, that they will repeat the same exercise they did the first time they attacked us.
Right. Well, and the simple reality is that you don't need to bring weapons into the United States.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like.
But you do need to have people.
Right, but yeah. People can come in with or without open borders. There's no way we're going to shut down tourism to the United States. I mean, it just seems to me like a specious argument. I'd like to get back to, or at least one that's not as important. You wrote this article in which you were suggesting that. Not just suggesting, that identifying the demands that Osama bin Laden had made, that we completely withdraw basically from the entire Middle East. I mean, originally he was talking about the Holy Land of Saudi Arabia, that the Muslim people's self-determination be allowed. In other words, we no longer prop up friends of ours like Mr. Mubarak or Mr. Hussein, King Hussein, and that we, at the very least, stop Israel from their control of the West Bank or building more territories or whatever, and that, in your opinion, bin Laden in his comments in Cairo had, and correct me if I'm mischaracterizing any of this, had said, we're with you on a lot of these things. He wasn't speaking obviously to bin Laden, but to the Muslim world. We're with you on a lot of these things. We're going to do these things, and he's put out some markers that if he doesn't fulfill them, you invoked the memory of Woodrow Wilson's 14-point peace program. He's not only going to be viewed as a hypocrite, but there's going to be blowback from this.
Oh, I think so. The president has put down a bunch of markers, as did Mr. Bush, and he won't follow through with any of them. He needs the Egyptians. He has to keep paying the Egyptians so they pretend they don't hate the Israelis. They're probably not going to do anything about oil, and so he needs to continue to placate the tyranny that runs Saudi Arabia. And my point on these things is not that we should change policy, really, although I think there's room for a great deal of policy adjustment. But what I resent probably more than anything else is the continuation of American leaders who tell the U.S. population that we're at war because they hate us for freedom and liberty and the rest of the retinue of nonsense that has been fed to us at least since the first Mr. Bush.
But the Obama administration has stopped using the phrase war on terror. They've stopped referring to things like the inanities, frankly, like they hate our freedoms. When you and I think probably realistically within the Obama administration, they get it, that the extent to which they hate us, it's because we're occupying their territories, we're draining their oil, we're taking their natural resources, we're propping up their dictators.
Well, that's certainly not the impression you would take away from Mr. Obama's speech in Cairo, or in any speech that Mr. Bush or Mr. Clinton or the first Mr. Bush made.
Well, why not? I mean, I think, forget what I think. It seems to me that in that speech, in that Cairo speech, Obama went about as far as an American president can go in acknowledging the reality of that list that you and I just went through, to the point where you've got Sean Hannity every single day saying Obama went to Cairo to apologize. Had he gone much farther, they would be accusing him of not just apologizing, but of treason.
Well, I guess the proof of the pudding, Tom, will come in whether he does anything or not.
For example?
For example, will we do anything about oil? Will we stop
our dependence on foreign oil?
Our dependence on foreign oil, yes. Right. Will we get out of the Arabian Peninsula? Right. Will we? All of these things are measurable.
Yeah.
And my own thought is you don't want to give the enemy metrics.
Yeah. Well, okay. We have just a half a minute. Just to wrap this up, Michael Scheuer, you were not accusing Mr. Obama of treason or of disliking his country or anything like that.
What I'm accusing accusing is maybe not the right word, but my view is that Mr. Obama and his predecessors care more about what the world thinks and what the media believes and says about them than they do about and about holding their jobs than they do about protecting Americans
from Al Qaeda,
from the general threat of militant Islam. Yes, sir.
In general, Michael Scheuer, thank you very much for dropping by today.
Thank you.
Good talking with you. 16 minutes past the hour.